Hi, welcome back to Menopause Madness. You may have noticed that I skipped a week. I was having some internet challenges that are now taken care of. And so today I will focus on something related to brain health and menopause and how menopause is actually restructuring your brain. And instead of that being a negative thing, it's actually beneficial. I watched a video that I'll tie in. The name of it was, I'll have to look it up and tell you later. Oh, Consciousness is Quantum. Um, so this very much ties in with spirituality and how your brain on menopause is contributing to that. Um, what else will I talk about? My past week of personal growth related to addressing triggers. Okay, so let's get started. So, what's happening in your brain as you are dealing with menopause changes is that the chemicals of your brain are shifting, and estrogen, which acts as a neurotransmitter as well, is in lesser quantity. Um, and as a result of these changes that are taking place, your brain then needs to adapt. And what it does in order to be able to accommodate these changes is parts of the brain that typically have not worked together as much start to work more in conjunction with one another. So your parts of your brain become in better community with one another. So areas are being linked and relying on one another that didn't used to do so much of that. And without getting too much into the weeds on that, it's creating new neural networks, and strengthening the overall community within you. So what this has to do with the video I watched this week called Consciousness is Quantum. And it was an interview involving, let's see if I can find that guy's name. Um, just had it. Stuart Hammeroff was being interviewed by a gentleman from an organization called, nope. Anyway, um, if it pops back in, I'll share it. During this interview, they were explaining the science behind consciousness, aka God, source, whatever word you want to give that. And they got into a discussion talking about that within the neurons of the brain, the nerve cells, there are something called microtubules. And within these microtubules, um, they are being triggered by polyaromatic rings. It's a type of structure, a chemical compound structure that is found in different types of neurotransmitters, serotonin being one of those. He also talks about how certain psychedelics have these type of rings. So why is this important? Because the current understanding from a guy who spent, this Hammeroff guy, spent most of his life as a medical doctor and anesthesiologist, recognizing and researching how anesthesia has an impact on consciousness, got very interested in studying about these aromatic rings and the impact they have the um, on the consciousness, on the alertness. The slower they go, the less conscious a person is. One of those particular neurotransmitters that has that aromatic ring structure is serotonin. Serotonin is very much impacted during, or can be during, menopause, um, because it's often carried by other hormones like testosterone. Um, so, serotonin being one of these structures that creates this interaction with these microtubules actually speeds up the oscillation of these microtubules to go faster. Obviously, less of that would imply that the microtubules are going slower, so at a lower frequency. And at a lower frequency, you would have a tendency to um, pick up on vibrations that are more, what's the word that my speaker used recently? Um, Undesirable emotions. I'm not sure if that's the word she used, but that's what I'm going to go with for right now. Not that any of them are bad or negative, but just ones we prefer and ones we don't, right? And as we experience these less desired emotions as a result of the frequency being lower in our brain, obviously that can affect your mood, which serotonin is very much known for. On the opposite end of the spectrum, what they've realized about psychedelics, things like MDMA, also known as ecstasy, and mushrooms and LSD and things like that, is that it increases the vibration of those microtubules because of that aromatic structure. And as a result of increasing the frequency, it not only increases consciousness, but also quantum events and quantum entanglement. So, some of the mystical experiences you hear people talk about with having used some type of psychedelic would be explained by the increase in vibration. And so, you're picking up on more from the environment than what you normally would, because, the analogy that comes to mind is like dogs being able to hear sounds that humans don't normally hear. They pick up on a frequency that we're not. Well, they're more in tune to it. We can be more in tune to those higher frequencies as well by the level of the chemicals in our brain. Well, before you start thinking that you have no say over this because menopause is doing this or that, um, you can alter your emotional state by choosing the thoughts. You just have to be more in a state of awareness and presence in order to do that. And I'm not suggesting that it's always easy, but it is simple. It's not something you have to run to the doctor for or buy this or that. Um, and as I've pointed out with the psychedelics, certain plants can be beneficial for helping to increase that oscillation. What does all of this have to do with the overall picture of menopause? While your brain is busy adapting by making more neural network connections between the various parts of your brain and creating more of a community effect within your brain, it is also then repairing those broken neurotransmitters that took place as a result of a lifetime of stories that have been stored and emotions that have been trapped that are now being released. Ties in with what took place for me this past week. As I said, I would share some of the personal growth things that happened. Um, where do I want to start? I'll start with the one from today because it's fresh in my mind. Recognizing when you get triggered that it's not the thing that's outside of you that is the issue. It's whatever thought you're having inside of you that needs to be addressed. The all is mind, in other words, and recognizing that any story we tell ourselves that involves lack or sickness or any of that is really just that, it's a story. And the more we confirm that story, the more it'll be true for us. And our body will retaliate when we start working on changing the story, because it's used to the way things have been. It's got this chemical addiction happening. So, what took place this morning that involved some growth on my part, I went to a study on the Course in Miracles, and it was a group that I had not participated with in the past. And my expectation was, and there's part of the trigger right there. My expectation was that I was going to be interacting with people who understood the power of their mind and that were never separate from God. And instead of experiencing that, what I experienced was a lot of people who um, are still struggling with the idea that they have any say so, or that they're perfectly acceptable right now, that there's nothing wrong. Wrong is just a story. And as I was interacting, I was feeling more and more uncomfortable because I'm watching these people create suffering within themselves and taking that on. Like, oh my goodness, I, I, I really want to help them not feel this. And in the meantime, I was creating my own suffering. By the time the group study was over, um, even prior to the end of it, I was about ready to bail. Like, I don't think I could stay any longer. But I recognized that pattern with myself and chose to stay and notice that, okay, I'm creating my own suffering right now. Um, and then I went. So the study was over. I went upstairs to participate in the next part of this service, and I was chatting with a friend because I reached out to say hello, and then the conversation started about what just took place. And I was very much enjoying what this person was doing to help me sort through this. And I ended up leaving the service because my phone was being disruptive and continuing that conversation and noticing that I was still very much feeling triggered and a lot of emotions stirred up that I just really didn't want to feel. So eventually, um, it it dawns on me that I'm creating my own suffering again, and I go to meditate and I come away with some new understandings and some new thoughts to write in place of the ones that were something like this. This shouldn't be happening. I have to help these people. Um, they're broken. I have to fix them. Um, this feeling that I'm having is not acceptable. Those kinds of thoughts. And eventually recognized, okay, I need to allow myself to feel what I'm feeling without judgment and allow them to feel what they're feeling, to have the experience that they're having without judgment. And as Eckhart Tolle says, make peace with everything that is non-peace, including allowing other people to choose to struggle with concepts of who they are truly. Um, Knowing that unconditional love includes holding a space for pain, and that what I can do for myself and for them is to choose to feel that unconditional love, to send that energy out, um, regardless of what they've got going on. And as I choose to feel that, I'm spreading that energy and I'm experiencing that energy instead of the energy of, oh my goodness, these things shouldn't be happening, and resisting all this discomfort. So, rewriting your story, whether that be related to something, some circumstance that you're facing, or your health, it very much involves taking control of your mind, and as often as is necessary, repeating to yourself what's actually true, which is I'm God and I get to decide the meaning of things, and I get to decide I'm sovereign over this body. I'm choosing sovereignty. Hopefully I remembered to touch on everything I said at the beginning. If you're enjoying these videos and you would like me to continue to make them, please comment or like or share. Um, I do enjoy sharing them for my own benefit because it helps me have a record of my progress, and also helps solidify those new thought patterns by me teaching others what I'm learning. With that said, make it a great day. Choose your thoughts wisely.